Hello there, my name is Ismas and welcome to another exciting tutorial. And yes, today we're going to be setting up this woverine effect. And yes, so what I'm going to do is show you how I set up this, and then for the continuation on how to set up the material, you can find the video on my second channel there. That's where I'll be posting everything else to do with materials, setting up the materials and texturing. But for this video, it's going to be mostly about how to make the effect. Yeah, so let's open up a new blend file and start there. Okay, so what you're going to be using is a cloth simulation. So let's have a plane here, rotate it 90 degrees to face me, like that, scale it up. Let me also turn on random colors and maybe cavity, just so we can be looking at a nice viewport. Yes, so this is what we have, and let me just scale it a bit in the x-axis and apply rotation and scale, and then I'll add in a few subdivisions because we need it for this cloth simulation, and this is what we have. Now, to set up this claw or whatever it is, this tearing, we need to make this cut here first. And the way you do that, I just go to edit mode and I use the knife tool. I think this, I don't know if it's here. Let me see. Okay, it's here, but the shortcut is K. You just hit K, and then you can draw. Just drag and draw the shape you want. So let me zoom in a bit. The more subdivisions you have in your mesh, the smoother your cut will be. But let's just draw something. Let me draw something interesting. Maybe let me see, something like that. Hit space. Before you do anything else, after hitting space, just hit V to kind of separate this edge from the rest of the edge. Now that is done, we can go start setting up the cloth simulation. So go to the physics tab, make sure that you have the mesh selected. Go to the physics tab, turn on cloth simulations, and if you play back, it should just fall down. That's because it's falling due to the gravitational force, but we don't want that. So you can remove it. You can remove the gravity altogether, make it 0, and you shouldn't see anything happening to the cloth because there are no forces acting on it. But if you add a force, like, so let's shift a force field, add a force there. Let's find where the cut is, somewhere like there. Play back. You can see the tearing starts getting exposed, and you can see the cloth itself also starts getting pushed. If we increase the strength of the force to about 50, you can see that is happening. And let me also shade smooth here, and also let me reduce the length of my timeline to about 50 frames. This is what we're having. The problem we're having now is that the entire cloth is moving, is being affected by the force, but we only want the area that is going to be torn by the claws. So what you can do is we want the cloth to the deformation to only happen where the tear is going to happen, and the way you do that, just go to the object data and go to object weight paint, so that we can start painting the areas that should be affected by the deformation. Currently, blue indicates that the entire mesh is being affected by the cloth simulation, as you can see right now. But we want to paint only the areas. We want the blue to only be where the tearing is supposed to be. So what we're going to do is first of all, go out of object weight paint and go to object mode, and go to edit mode, select everything, and then add a new vertex group and assign a weight of 1. If we go to weight mode, you should see that everything is now red, meaning that nothing is going to be affected by the cloth simulation. But if you play back right now, everything is affected by the cloth simulation, because if we go under the physics tab, cloth settings. Under shape, you see that we haven't set up a pinning group to tell the cloth simulator what parts of the cloth are going to be pinned and what parts of the cloth are supposed to be deform. So just select the group we have created, and now nothing, when you play back, nothing is getting deformed. So now you can go to wireframe and start drawing where you see that deformation. Make sure you change the weight here to about 0 and then start painting like that. If you are using Blender 2.8 and below, this toolbar will not be there. You can access these tool settings under the tools menu here. So you find the brush and other settings related to the weight tool under here. But if you're using 2.81, the toolbar has been also duplicated to be above here when you have a tool selected. Okay, so you can see it's very difficult to know where the line is right now. So what we're going to do, go to edit mode and then make sure to select this edge, and it's really going to be hard to, so let's see. And I think the best way we should have done this is select this edge before we started working on anything. So what I'm going to do is just select everything, right click, merge by distance, so that I can easily select this edge using Control. So you just select one vertex, one edge like this, and then hold Control, then select the next one. Blender will select all the vertices between that, the edges between that, like that. And now after we do that, we can just duplicate this using Shift D to duplicate it. Make sure you don't move it anywhere, and then hit P to separate that. Then you should have an separate object that is the path or edges you cut. Now again, don't forget to go back. Let me first hide this object we have here. Don't forget to go back, select this edge group again and hit V so that you have it separated again. And now if I unhide this and select the cloth, go to weight paint, I can see this line now and use that as a guideline. Again, make sure you have the weight paint set to a very low number, and then, you know, not the radius, but set the strength to 1. Let's have this radius a little bit smaller. And start painting over the line like that. So this will make sure that only the areas, the vertices around this line or around the cut are deformed. So if we play back, you can see what is happening. Now the tear is happening automatically and only happening where the force is, but I want it to be animated to kind of follow this force, to follow this path here. And since we have this duplicate line created, this here, where is it? Make sure it's not a cloth object. So this line here, we can convert it. Let me first hide this and just work on this. So we can convert this into, just select it, go under object menu, and then convert it to a curve. Now that we have it converted to a curve, we can select the force. Actually, the force won't work because it's an empty. You can create a temporary object like a cone here. And just rotate it. Maybe just rotate it like this, and add a curve modifier and select this as a curve. Because we have converted it to a curve, it should act as, it can be used as a curve modifier. And then now if we move this to position, so let me just make sure, so make sure that this object is at the same position as the pivot point of the curve, so that you can easily align it with the curve to follow that curve. So if I move this on the, let me see, x-axis, you can see how it easily follows the curve. So we can add a keyframe at the beginning here and a keyframe at around 50 and animate it like that. So see, and then we can parent the force to follow this curve. So if I parent this force directly on the object here, Control P, keep transformation of the empty will not follow the curve directly. It will only follow the x direction of the curve, which is just the straight line, as you can tell from the center of this object. It won't follow the deformation created by the curve object. It will only follow the pivot point of this mesh. So to make it follow the mesh itself, we need to first clear the parent. So clear, and select the object you want it to follow. Go to edit mode, then select any of the vertices of the object, then go out of edit mode. Now you can select the empty and then the object, and then Control P. Instead of using parent to object, now parent to vertex. This will parent the object to the vertex, and since the vertex is following the deformation, this empty should also follow the deformation. But if you parent it to the object instead of the vertex, the empty will follow the pivot point, and if you can see from the pivot point here, it's just going in a straight line. So instead, it will be going in a straight line if you parent it to the object instead of the vertex. So make sure you parent it to a vertex instead of an object, and you will have it follow the that curve. And since that curve is the tear, or the shape of the tear, you can see how it affects the mesh, or whatever you want to call it, the metal or whatever, the tear. So now what is left is to play with the settings of both the cloth modifier and the force we're using here. So these are the settings I used for the cloth. You have to play around with your mesh, because it might be different in scaling, and yeah, different things, variables might change the simulation. So you have to play around with different settings to see what you will get for yourself. Another thing I did in this original example is that I set the force. Actually, I didn't, because the shape of the cone, the shape of the force, the fall off, I changed it to cone, and I think I got better results by doing that. So let's do that as well here. So select the force, and under fall off, make sure the shape is set to cone, and also I think we have to set a minimum width or a maximum width. So let's see. Again, you might have to use the measure tool to see the size, or you can see this is 1 meter, and we want it to be around 0.9. Let's see. I think the force might be a little bit high, so let's try 10. Let's try 20. And I think I might also need a little bit more subdivision, so I'm just going to subdivide this a bit. This may also create a few issues here, but let's see. Because of the way this subdivision is working right now, you might want to subdivide. If you want to add more resolution, you might want to do that before you make the cut, or let's just use a subdivision surface here, and then just have it below. So play around with the force, the radius of the force, and the cloth settings. So these are the settings I used for the cloth settings. Again, you have to experiment with it. Even when you try this a few times, you will be getting a bit different results, because that's how simulations work. You rarely get the same results over and over. So you might have to tweak them over and over, because again, this is a simulation. Sometimes produces random results. So let's try to mimic the same settings here. So for my shape, let me see, I use a mass of 5 kilograms. So physics properties, 5 kilograms. Viscosity, I set that to 0. Tension 0.5. I think this is, let me make sure that I'm using the same force here. So I use the force of that was quite high, and I use the maximum distance of 0.1. Let me see how the scale of my things here. So I use so this is about 0.1. So the tear was about 1 meter. So let's see how big my tear is. I think this might be a bit. Oh, actually, I didn't use a force. I think I used a wind. It was producing better results, and so it needs to face a different direction. Okay, you can see, yeah, this would produce better results. If you use wind, you'll get better results than force. And now you just have to play around with the spread and flow. So let's see, I think this is a bit too large. Let's try 50. And let's see. Again, if your scale is different from my scale, you might have to play around with different settings, with your settings here to see. Saying, let's scale this down even further. You also just want to affect the location of the vertices. I think 100. Apply scale. I want this air to start blowing, not to blow the entire cart at once. So make sure this. So let's see. Let's first turn off the location, and we'll see what is affecting. Affect location. Again, you might have to experiment quite a lot. Let's see. Okay, see the distance, how this is affecting. So if you increase it just a little bit, and start to see its effect. Let me try 50. Okay, so the wind is not working very well here. So what I'm going to do is change it from wind to force, because it's blowing the entire cloth at the same time, and I wanted to just kind of influence just a portion and then follow that path as the entire thing tears. So let's use a force, and let's see what shapes do we have. Again, make sure that the shape is set to cone, and let's see the minimum. Let's try a minimum value 1. Yeah, you can see now how it's blowing it, but I think the maximum value is a bit too high, so let's try 0.5 and see. Yeah, that's a bit better, but let's try 0.5. Let's try 5,000. Okay, this is too much. Let's try 500 with, let's see 500 with again, it doesn't matter how many times you have done this, you might have to re-experiment, because every time you make the simulation, it's going to run differently. And let's see, again, I'll be posting the settings I used for my project. Or maybe if you are a patron, you can just download the entire project and examine it. This original project, final project here, and examine it yourself. Maybe let me just break it down here. The forces we use here, if you want to copy them. So this is the force I used. I use a type of force. This is a shape point. Strength was 1,000. Affected only location, which doesn't really matter if you're affecting our location as well. The shape for the force was cone, and yeah, everything. There is nothing different from the settings I'm using here. And again, this was attached on an object which I just hid here. Let me unhide that. Where is that? I think it's this here. Where is that? That one is here. Yeah, you can see this is the object I parented the force on, and it's as well following this path here, as you can see, and then the force and this hand here are parented to the vertex of this object and follow that path to end up with what you're seeing here. Yeah, so again, you might need to subdivide your mesh a little bit more than I had here. I think that's one of the problems we are facing here, because I didn't subdivide this mesh enough times to get good resolutions, so you might want to do that. Yeah, so if you want to download the project files here, you can become a Patreon and download them there. But in the next part that I'll be uploading on my second channel, Blender Money, we're going to talk about the material setup that I did here to achieve these results here. Yeah, thank you for watching.